But, well, statistics also shows that companies which are IP active perform better economically than companies which are not IPR active. And, well, that it also states in these statistics that IPR active companies have a stronger competitiveness than companies who are not IP active. That is why we work to promote IP policy as a central part of the general policy to promote business and growth in Denmark. Actually, there are different ways to do it, but we haven't set up a separate IP strategy. We have included IP in the different kind of initiatives the Danish government is taking. And I can mention some few of these initiatives. They are a globalization strategy, innovation strategy, growth teams. So there are many different initiatives, and in all these initiatives, IP is included for good reasons. We have, well, what are we then doing? We have created an IP marketplace and an IP trade portal. Today I will not go into great details, but I can basically say that the intention behind the marketplace is to create a place where interested sellers and buyers can meet. We do not take place and take part in the actual trade, so we do not know to what extent it is successful, but we have created this place because we had got the knowledge that it's difficult for SMEs to meet and trade. On the marketplace, it's possible to list a price, but it's not a requirement. You can also mention that it's to be negotiated later on. You can list patents, trademarks, designs, and but you can mention who you are, but you can also be anonymous. Then the interested buyers can contact you, and hopefully there will be some fruitful outcome out of this contact. Maybe I should just finalize the marketplace by saying that one single marketplace as we have wouldn't do, but we have contact and created a network to different marketplaces around the world. Goes from Hong Kong, California, Singapore. We are now negotiating with the big innovation in London, and we have all in all, I guess, 16 partners, among them also WIPO Green. So, well, and it is our intention to broaden the network. But now turning to another topic which we are dealing with and have been dealing with for some time, that's education. Education in knowledge on IP. Well, it's always a good question, when should you start? My personal view is that you should start very early. We know that in Japan they do that. We know also that Korea with great success have been doing that. We have started with groups like students at upper second education and higher education, universities and bachelor programs, for instance, and also different relevant entrepreneurs with little or hardly any knowledge on IP. We have developed a tool on our website, and the tool is aimed at students so that they can go in and look further into what is IP. And we have created a film so that they can have the knowledge whenever they have the time and are not occupied by lessons at school. The wording of that is boost your idea, well, there's a web page where you can go in and actually see what we have created. Enforcement is another topic which we constantly are dealing with. Enforcement in different aspects and respects. We have been active in that area since 2009, and well, the reason being, what is good about IP? If the IP is only worth the paper written on it, if you do not have the necessary resources to enforce your right and to get your right, then it's worth really not that much. One could say it's only a waste of time and money then. We have created a network because it's not easy either to get the different public sectors to speak to one another. I could imagine you have the same issue here, and your country are much, much bigger than ours. So to get the different public sectors to speak to one another, perform the same, to do it the same way, to have the same view when we represent Denmark internationally, that's quite a task. We have set up this network, and the network create or distribute knowledge, and in this respect it's knowledge about how to fight IPR infringements. It goes also for counterfeiting and piracy, and we are in the area of enforcement about to create an IPR unit. It will be up and working here from the 1st of January, and the intention behind that is to have a place where you can contact someone who have some knowledge about IP and infringement of IP and get an oral opinion. You can also get a written opinion. For that reason, we have extremely good cooperation with the public prosecutors, and one of my employees has been based at the office there, and actually she has been taking part of prosecutions there to have a greater detail of knowledge. Another initiative is the insurance, because it's fine that you have the court, you have the prosecutor, you have everything, but the cost of enforcing your right in Denmark maybe not extremely high, but high enough for many SMEs. Because of that, we have, in cooperation with a private company, launched an insurance scheme, and that insurance scheme can be taken by everyone, every company. But the price differs. What is the area which you would like to cover? It depends also on the technology, in which area, and the geographical scope. It is the private company running the scheme. We have been, so to say, a facilitator of the process, securing that it's in place. And I can inform you that we are now working on such a scheme on a European scale and in relation to the upcoming unitary patent and the court system, because what we hear is that it's fine, good, done, but our industry can't afford to prosecute their patents. So we are, together with the Commission, in the process of launching a scheme which SMEs can use in that respect. Of course, knowledge about IP and greater information is crucial, because the whole beauty of the patent system is, well, one could simply keep it secret what one have invented, but then we will all invent the wheel once again. Better ways of using your efforts is to have a patent if it's worth your invention is worth it, but yes, I will suddenly and very quickly finalize. But you need to have the knowledge about what is already invented, and that you can get via the PatLab centers. We have once had 1 in Denmark, but now we have 4. And then the final. IPR turnaround. Well, the purpose of that is to get some insight into how do business use IP, and how could it support a company of the size of 30 to 40 employees. You can read more about it on our webpage. And then the final. The IPR Business Insight is another program. These 2 programs are financed by Danish Industry Foundation, and the purpose is to make IPR a tool for business. That's in essence what it's all about. So with these words, I would like to say thanks for your attention, and sorry for using a little bit of the time which our previous speakers didn't use.
Thank you very much, Anne. I think it was good that you used some of the time that was very graciously left by Neeraj and other speakers, Paul also. And may I now request Mr. Michael Marloni, the first Secretary of Trade and Economic Affairs, Delegation of the European Union to India, to make the presentation, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon. I will be very quick. I have a timer in front of me. Also because the first part of my presentation contains some figures that are already known, that I saw other panelists illustrating, so it saves some time. The fact that IPR and innovation are linked, and this is the way to foster innovation and to foster a sustainable growth. Here are the figures that have been already given to you by EPO on the role that IPR intensive industry has in Europe. I can imagine that in other economies like the US or Japan or China, we would come to figures that are similarly impressive. Some other figure on India performance, yes, those are just numbers, so just one side of the story, but it's useful to keep some order of magnitude in mind. India, of course, is in a competitive environment. There are other countries which have big population, emerging markets, which have a great which have clocked a great growth and are hunger for growth. So, for example, China or Brazil or the other BRICS countries, even if now some people say that BRICS should not be used any longer. So just one figure, India invests 0.8% of her GDP in research and development, while China 2%. So certainly there is room for a collective effort by public, but also private actor in the country to foster research and development. Again, some figure on patents. We see, 40,000 patents maybe are better than, good patents are better than 600,000 bad patents, but it is very welcome, the effort which is being made now by the government of India to increase the capacity of the Indian Patent Office, because this is one of the issues which prevents or which worry investors from abroad, from the European Union, for example, that the time of processing for their patent request is too high, and also then possible litigation could take a lot of time. So on a more positive side, I'll say, we have to admit that on the policy side, there's a lot of activity and that things are going to the right direction. I would say, first of all, the program, the flagship program of the government to make in India. There are a lot of, I mean, they mention IPR in a lot of places, and the IPR policy is now being revised, not for the first time, but we are waiting for the text which should be agreed upon by the Prime Minister office, I suppose, in a matter of few weeks. Of course, there are expectations that many of these nice policies and nice words will be put in place. I had one example from the energy sector on how IPR can help a small company, a small Indian company, to become world leader, but I think there's not much place for that now. Then the maybe more interesting slide from my presentation, or at least for me, the cooperation between EU and India on IPR issues. There are different opinions, of course, on certain topics, on certain policy issues which are very important, but there are a lot of opportunities for cooperation. Let's not forget that EU is India's first trade partner, economic partner. EU is taken as a block the first economy in the world. India is the fourth economy in the world. So we are talking about two major economic actors. There is a very good cooperation between EPO and IPO. EPO is not under the aegis of the European Union, but of course there is strong cooperation between the European Patent Office and the European Union on policy or implementation of those policies. EBTC, which has been doing a great job, especially on IPR, which is a EU fund project, and EU co-fund project. And then now we are starting a project which is run by OHIM, which is the European Trademark Agency, in the framework of a bigger program, which is CITD, Capacity Building Initiative for Trade and Development. So it is a 2 million project which deals with trademark and geographical indication, basically trying to help Indian businesses to better understand and use to their favor the legislation we have in the European Union for trademark and GIs, and of course there is a substantial part in relating to the exchange of best practices. Last thing, but very important, this should be embedded in the context of the structured dialogue between EU and India. This dialogue actually is not taking place in such a structured way. There are, of course, contacts between the European Union and the government of India, but they do not come in the form of a structured dialogue. There has been an agreement between EU and India signed in 2005 that this dialogue should take place, but this has not happened so far. With other countries which are in a similar position, like, for example, Brazil or India or China, we have this dialogue. And just I want to close my presentation with one little joke. So with China, we have been having this dialogue for 10 or 15 years. And now the office of the EU delegation in China, in Beijing, they have 2 IP experts. While in India, in our office, in the EU delegation, we don't have any IP experts. So I have a colleague who is a former IP attorney who helps me covering this very complex and complicated issue, but we don't have IP experts. So I really hope that maybe in a few years' time, we also, in the EU delegation of New Delhi, we also be able to say, look, send an IPR expert, because really we are working very, very deeply with the government of India. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think you kept your iPhone on, right, with the timer, and that's what I could see that. I think we have Professor Chirantan Chatterjee from the IIM Bangalore to make the presentation. Please, Professor.
About talking after 3 speakers have spoken is you can behave as an anonymous peer reviewer, except that you can't be anonymous, your face is in front of you. Just a quick start to Michelle's comment about China's IPR office. I don't think we need to do the way China is doing things. We can create our own benchmarks in the world. So we need to appreciate that. We don't need to always compare ourselves to how China is doing things. It's a general direction in which I think policymakers are moving in India. It has to be more about inclusive innovation. Sure, we respect the fact there has to be intellectual property in the process. There are a lot many poor here. And we don't want to morph into a capitalism that breaks social tensions in the country. I think that's a starter that I didn't anticipate to start with this statement, but I wanted to certainly make that point. So I have my notes on my phone, so I'll use that. Mark Twain, the British author, had once written that a country without a patent office and good patent laws was just a crab and couldn't travel any way but sideways or backwards. So the big question is, why do we need intellectual property laws in an economy? And if you ponder on that, you will understand that the idea is that the property here is not land or a house, but an idea. And it's in the inherent nature of the idea that lies the motivation for having IPR laws. So ideas, as economists like to look at it, are non-rivalrous and non-exclusive. If you have an idea in the market, you can't take that idea away from somebody else using that idea. And neither can you exclude somebody else from using that idea. So artificially, policymaker has to step in to give some incentives to innovate. Otherwise, nobody will innovate in the world. That's point number one. Point number two, Bob Solow in his 1956 paper, which won him the Nobel Prize, wrote about economic growth of nations and debated that it's all about human capital and physical capital, throwing out of the window the role of ideas. He said it's a manna from heaven. Over time, people acknowledge that it's actually ideas within the economy endogenously generated, which got Paul Romer his Nobel Prize in 1994 about the critical role of innovation and economic growth. This is why the Europeans are trying intellectual property to reinvigorate economic growth. The Chinese are trying intellectual property. So we have to appreciate that fact that while we have to do inclusive innovation and IPR has to be carefully crafted in a country like ours, it is also critical for long-run economic growth. It's unavoidable because of the nature and the importance with which it flows into the economic growth engine. So with those two comments, let me just tell you a bit about why I am here. I'm an empirical economist of innovation. I work on big data sets related to questions in innovation. So Anne was talking about this initiative in Denmark where kids are being sensitized to IPR policies. Immediately my researcher brain went up saying, okay, I want the data set of these children to understand here is an input by the Danish government. Is it really resulting in some kind of an output? And I don't want to believe in hearsay or case studies. I want big data sets over time across regions, across different heterogeneous schools to understand whether that particular policy making in the Danish environment is actually paying gains. So if you look up my website on IMB, you will see a lot of work on economics of innovation, particularly in the context of pharmaceutical and healthcare that I've done, using this empirical lens on data in the pharmaceutical, which is of course a very controversial realm in itself. We'll not go there for the moment. The other point I want to quickly mention is there is a greater consciousness today in the country that IPR is important. Our Prime Minister actually exhorted the startups in his independent speech by saying about Startup India. And a lot of the startup movement in the country today is actually built on IPR. You can't just tweak a small business model and retain your competitive advantage. As a strategy professor, we know that's not a long-run game that startups can play. So there is a greater consciousness in our Indian Patent Office. Dr. Kardam and his colleagues are doing they're trying to transform themselves. So the numbers that you have seen in the Global Innovation Index, expect them to change in less than a few years. So I see a